Well, good morning, everybody. Well, as you can see from my starting image today, I did not beat the sunrise again. My flight last night into Chicago is delayed by over 3 hours. I had to switch planes out of Omaha, and I still have another 2.5-hour drive to get home. So got home a little late again, but woke up early this morning to get things going. I was excited to see where this pattern was going to take us, but I had some model run failures. I'm going to get this all fixed today. I'm going to get caught up on rest. We'll get back to a normal routine. So I apologize. I know a lot of you try to catch this early in the morning. So here it is. This is the system that's still stacked up, and this is just this morning's sunrise. And this has been a pretty potent system. So if you just trace this one back to its beginning, it's been responsible for over almost 800 reports of severe weather so far. And even yesterday on its backside, we can just go back and look at it. You can see a lot of snow squalls underneath this, some very heavy snow farther to the north. We had strong to severe storms that rolled through the east. And this low just delivered a lot of cold air behind it. You could also see just at the tail end of this, as the sun was setting, some prescribed burns that were happening throughout parts of the plains, getting down here into the delta as well. But as we watch one system slowly exit its way through the northeast, our next one is already taking shape here. And as you know, through the middle of the month, we're looking at some pretty active weather. So here's a quick rundown of what we're going to talk about. I'm going to cover that, take a look at when we start to see some planting windows. And specifically who I'm going to be focusing on here is this section of the country, a large bit of the central U.S. We're going to talk about when the West could start to accumulate some heat. They're very far behind on that. And then I'm also going to answer some questions about ocean temperatures. I've been seeing them a lot in the comments, and I want to get in and dig into that. So all of that's ahead. We're even going to look at the newest long-range CFSV2 model while we wait on all the new data to come in. Okay, first thing, though, I want to show you is that over the last 7 days, we've got to hand it to the weather forecasting system. Not only did the GFS and the European model hit this, but so did the artificial intelligence, the ensembles. This was really well forecast. This extremely heavy rain that was coming through this section of the U.S. Now, take note of some of the areas that were missed. While we had heavy snow here, there was a large area right in through here that's been missed. We can see that throughout the northern plains, even getting down to the southern plains, and some pockets here in the mid-south missed out on this precipitation event as well. And I bring that up because I'm continuing to monitor where we currently sit with our recent precipitation, because spring rains are absolutely critical to the start of any growing season. And if we just take a look back since March 1st, some of those holes really begin to jump out to you. So I'm thinking about part of the Columbia Basin, the Red River Valley of the North, getting into parts of South Dakota. So even despite some of that snow, we're still on the much drier than average side of the distribution. Take a look at a big section of Kansas, Oklahoma, western Texas, in the mid-south here, where the Ohio and Mississippi come together. We can look at it another way. This is just the last 30 days. So rather than going back to the beginning of March, but just the last 30 days here, this is our percent of normal map. And it reflects a lot of what you just saw there. But certainly several places in through here are now looking at twice their normal precipitation, some places up to 3 times. And we will be seeing some changes in this. There is some good news here in the Mid-South. I know we're trying to rapidly start planting a crop here, but there's some heavy rains that are coming your way, and we need to see what happens to this very dry part of the southern plains here and also the northern plains as we progress forward. So I'm going to start you off with the artificial intelligence forecast. Now, you notice that that hole I just showed you is still there in the forecast. But to the south of it, this next system rolling through here that we're going to detail in a few moments is making a pretty big pull back here into the panhandle with water. And the good news about that is this is one of 3 areas I've been very concerned. I've been hammering in every video about the risk of summer drought development. So anything that pushes that back is a signal I like to see. I mentioned that we were going to really start to work against the longer standing dry conditions in parts of western Kentucky, Tennessee, getting right here into the Boot Heel of Missouri and surrounding areas. There's a pretty massive push and pretty strong model agreement, or some very heavy rains that are going to come into this area. And just take note of so much of the south and southeast pulling all the way into the northeast, going to be extremely wet. There is a corridor coming out of Montana right into this part of South Dakota that looks wetter, but the farther north you go, the models continue to give a drier signal. And where we need the moisture to honestly stop and get some heat in place, we're not quite there just yet for the West Coast. Now, given that that's where we're going to be seeing some changes in the, in the overall moisture, let's go back and have a quick talk about snow. So through 7 o'clock last night, we can see a broad swath here, very well forecast by the models, of 6 to 10, in some places almost a foot of snow in this area. We've already talked about this snow and how it's already melted. Most of it has, at least. But a lot of snow squalls and some, at times, heavier snow that's gotten into eastern Iowa, Illinois, Indiana. And this was just through, 7 o'clock last night. When I drove home between like midnight and 2, I ran into several time periods where there were brief but intense snow showers, right here on I-57, just as an example. Now, why it doesn't look like much in the Northeast is because we're still waiting to get that snow in. And this will be a map that at about 9 o'clock this morning will update. And it's on our website here. And what it's showing you, though, and what I'm looking forward to seeing is, with all of that new data in place, how much do the numbers right in here change? I know it's a small area, but it's just an important thing to look at. So this is season-to-date snowfall departure from average. Okay, so this morning, the heaviest snow is here, but we're still dealing with that low. It's not moved very far at all in the last 24 hours. Remember, we talked about yesterday, it's all stacked up. So we're going to see quite a bit of snow into the interior of the Northeast today, but this cloud cover, cold conditions, little bursts of rain, and some snow will be present all day. But the next system's gearing up in the west, and it, just like the previous one, is sliding north to south. It's just spinning right here off the California coast. We're going to have to take a deeper dive into where that system's going and the ones following it. So as I was recording this at 7:30, about an hour and a half later than I like to do this, you can see the all hazards weather map is reflecting one system leaving and the other one entering. So let's just start in the middle, where we have freeze watches, freeze advisories, freeze warnings out for parts of Missouri. We've got strong winds in the south. That's what these advisories are for. Plus, right in here, we have a red flag warning. But all of these little polygons in through here represent where there's flooding. And as you get into the Northeast, we've got winter storm warnings still throughout New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, getting into parts of Maine. And there'll be some coastal flooding here as well. But throughout the west, this is a very, very windy system that's coming through. Winter storm warnings line the mountains here, but throughout much of the Great Basin to the Four Corner states, it's either red flag warnings, excessive wind, high wind advisories, and that's how potent this next system is really going to be in that area. So let's go have a quick look at the snow before I come back to that new system in the west. Still some chances for more snow accumulating here around the Great Lakes, but just take a look at this part of New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and most of Maine really getting hit pretty hard. And if you're here along the Appalachian Mountains, Blue Ridge Mountains, we're looking at some on the west-facing slopes, some decent accumulations as well, given how cold the temperatures are. But by the time we get to the middle of today, look how strong the winds are in the west. Screaming out of the south, the low is just off the coast, and this is going to be a major problem for a lot of people, just given such strong and violent winds moving through this section of the U.S. But the cold air is still tucked in through here. And we're going to talk about when we expect the warm-up to get here, when we get a planting window to open up, and how many more systems do we have to deal with in between. Okay, so high-res models first, and then we'll get into those answers. Picking this up at 8 o'clock this morning. We're going to watch one low spin its way off to the north and east, and the other one slide right here along the California coast. You can see the snows in the interior of the west. And by the time we get into Friday afternoon and evening, this system is going to move through the Intermountain West, start to add snow throughout almost the entire spine of the Rockies here. And it's going to eject right through Colorado into Wyoming and Nebraska. And this low that's sitting in through here, we need to see where the upper level trough is going to be and how it ejects, and then what follows it. Because you know that there's an area right in through here that I'm trying to get to see if we can get some moisture back into this region before we really see significant drought risk developing later this summer. So this system's not going to be able to do it, but we will watch the next ones to see if they can. So let's go to it. This would be that top-down view I've been looking at a lot here to assess how other features, maybe in Europe or Russia or in the Arctic, are influencing our pattern. And in the near term, there's some pretty significant ridging, one that's pushing into Alaska, one that's here between the Hudson Bay and Greenland. This is a pattern I mentioned earlier this week that I would have loved to have seen this winter. I mean, it would have kicked off. Well, you wouldn't have a snow departure map looking like the one I showed you a few moments ago. We would have filled all of that in across the northern tier of the United States. But here we go. Here's the low we're keeping an eye on. That's the stacked one. But this is the guy here by Friday getting into Saturday morning. See where this comes out? Right between Wyoming, Colorado, Nebraska, and this side of Kansas. But because of the large ridge that's out ahead of it, there's a lot of meridional flow, right? So it's coming around like that. And this system goes straight north. So watch this. This is Saturday night getting into Sunday. What did it do? It just kind of pulls north right into this part of the Dakotas. Now I'll show you what it did in the models in a few minutes and where we're concerned about the risk of some strong to severe storms. But the one that a lot of folks are watching is the low that's behind it. Because by midday on Monday, this trough here, you can see it's open, flow's coming through, and we're trying to figure out where there will be cloud cover. Will the ridge that's here keep parts of, the track of the eclipse in a good position for viewing? How far back to the west is the cloud cover going to be? We're going to answer that, but this is the trough we've been keeping an eye on. That's midday Monday. And the concern is by Monday night, we could be talking about a severe weather threat right into this part of the southern plains around the Red River Valley. Well, that low, remember, comes out much farther to the south. And that is the one, the slow-moving one, the one that's kind of cut off from the overall flow, that's helping to deliver all of that moisture right into this area. Now, that system rolls through. This is now next Thursday into Friday. And I want to show you something. I had been more concerned about the 13th, like the 12th through the 14th, I should say, about the depth of this trough, because I was thinking about when is this last big push of cold air going to come through? And the latest model trends have backed off, I think, on the depth of that, which means you're going to see a warmer trend. And the big question is, what about this? It looks like, almost nothing, right? This is the 10-day forecast. It's out there on the 14th. What is that? Because the artificial intelligence system has a little bit deeper trough there that rolls across the northern tier of the United States, and that will have cold air in it. But what we've been making a case for is that the trough ridge pattern shifts a bit farther to the north, more mild air tries to come into the United States, and past mid-month, although I don't necessarily think we completely just shut off the rain, I do see a little bit different trajectory on the troughs. Can you see how the next one is a bit farther to the north than digging way down into Southern California coming into Texas? So this could be the break toward a more mild pattern, and we're going to find some planting windows when this mild pattern gets in place. So that's the overall assessment. But it's April, so we don't expect just a complete shutdown of the moisture. Okay, so bigger picture. Let's just peel that back to the next 10 days. This is a map looking at the chance of getting another inch. And we're pretty well zoned in on the next two systems delivering a lot of wet conditions down here into parts of the lower Mississippi River Valley and surrounding states. So much of the south, mid-south, and even into the southeast. But there is, coming out of Montana, a spot right in through here that we're going to have to watch out for some heavy precipitation as well. So let's get in and kind of figure this out, and we're going to go straight to the models. Now, one of the other reasons why I was delayed this morning was that I had to completely rerun my European model, and I will fix this problem with this model today. I do not know fully what's going on with it, but I've got a bad data delivery from the Europeans, and I need to get it solved because it's costing me a lot of time waiting on it to get fixed. So let's just get through the first system, leaving the Northeast. Let's now talk about the next one that pulls out right here into parts of Colorado, Nebraska, and Wyoming. It's in both models. So that is what things look like on Saturday night. We do need to keep an eye out on Saturday night right in through here for the risk of strong to severe storms. So we'll watch that very carefully. But this low is going to be quite tightly wound. It's going to be very windy around it. And it's going to very just slowly spin its way from Colorado almost to like Sioux Falls. And it's going to take about 36 hours to get there. So that low moves to this point by Sunday night. And it just sits there and spins, being pesky and delivering cloud cover and some precipitation to the northern plains and upper Midwest through Monday night. Okay, what happens after that, if you remember, is that trough digs way down through California and then comes out early next week right here, such that let's go back a tick here, such that by the afternoon and evening on Monday, when the solar eclipse will be happening, we're already watching this area for cloud cover and precipitation. The southeast ridge is helping to fuel that moisture in. So you'll notice that by getting into that night, I think we're going to have to keep an eye out right in through here for some strong to severe storms. And as we play through Tuesday into Wednesday, this is the system that really just slowly moves across the south from Monday all the way through Thursday, just soaking this area multiple times with heavy rain and the risk of strong to severe storms and just the risk of flooding. So then we get past that, and that system moves through the east. This will be next Thursday, Friday. See it right in through there. And then what I'll question is, how far to the south does this next low get? That's what we're going to keep an eye on. Okay, so I mentioned the risk of those strong to severe storms. This is the outlook for Monday, right there in this part of the Red River Valley. And then this is the outlook on Tuesday. Same kind of area because of how slow the system's moving. So again, Monday, Tuesday, we're going to watch these two areas. All right. Next, cloud cover. This is a European ensemble chance of cloud cover greater than 75%, right about the time the eclipse is happening. So we know that it goes across the country, something like that, or close to that. And my concern is all this cloud cover here. Now, I want to show you the operational run. So let's go to the European operational run. We need to go back to the 0Z. And I'm going to come over here to upper air moisture and go to total cloud cover. And I've got this queued up for right there. That would be about the time frame. So we're looking here to see where the model is putting down this cloud. And so you can see the color bar on the bottom. I don't know. I think there's going to be some openings here in the mid-south and toward the northeast. But there's going to be some clouds interfering with this, all because of that trough that slid through here and is just slowly making its way out. And that's the result of it, unfortunately. It looks like it's going to be cloudy into this section of the country. Wet, too. Next 7 days, total accumulated precipitation. This whole part of the lower Mississippi River Valley has the ability to pick up 1 to 4 inches of rain, maybe even more than that in certain places. But just take a good look at what the WPC is predicting for total precip. We can compare that to the European 7-day outlook and the GFS. And when you compare these two models to one another, you do note that the GFS is substantially wetter in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, whereas the European is wetter farther back to the west with the slower progressing system here. So I just wanted to point out a couple of those differences across this very wet region to our south. From there, let's just take a quick look at the 7-day snowfall total. We're watching a lot of this right now. Same thing for the Appalachian Mountains. What you're seeing in the west, though, is coming from those next two systems. And so some late season snow adding up for parts of Montana, getting into Wyoming, also right in through this here, the Blue Mountains here, and along the Cascades in the Sierra Nevada, adding some more late season snow as well. But honestly, we need to kick some of this out and get some mild air back into place, and questioning whether or not we're able to do that. The good news about the pattern overall is that the European ensemble, the GFS ensemble, and the CPC are looking out there from the 11th through the 17th, going after a drier pattern in through here. So our question is going to be, during that time frame, do we get a warm-up? The European model and the GFS are both suggesting, take a look at this, day 5 through 10, day 10 through 15, that during this drier stretch, we're going to open this up to some mild conditions. I think you're going to see a lot of rapid planting in that area. The brakes were really thrown on the temperature pattern over the last few weeks, going back to March 20th, taking a look at how much cold air has come into this part of the country here. But the only spot that's managed to stay warmer than average over this stretch of days has been this section here of Tennessee and parts of Kentucky. So how are the temperatures going to transition? Well, let's have a look here. This is Thursday's highs. Today's, you can just see that low just continuing to spin, keeping things colder here. Some good flow coming back into the Central Plains, warming everything up. The deeper low in the west, keeping it quite cold. So we've kind of striped the United States here with the temperature pattern by the time we get in from Friday and Saturday. Here's Sunday's highs compared to average, getting into Monday, going out there. So remember, Monday, the severe weather risk right into this area. A lot of mild air out ahead of this, going into Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. But I showed you kind of the blown out view of it, but here's the individual maps. That's day 5 through 10, and this is day 10 through 15. And that is that window I think is going to start to open up in this area. That's going to be just a little more open than we've seen as of late for getting some field work done and getting some planting rolling in this region. There's agreement in the models. This is what the European says. Day 5 through 10, that's out there to the 14th. And here we go, day 10 through 15, which gets us to the 19th. Now, anytime we see such mild conditions being forecast like this from mid to late April, we just begin to get concerned. Does it snap back for some cold conditions at the end of April? And we'll be watching for that, but I don't necessarily see it. So what we'll see out of that pattern evolving is this. I just want you to blur your eyes, and I want you to watch that contour line right there. That's the 50-degree isotherm and 4-inch soil temperatures. And as I play this forward, do you notice how with the mild air coming in, watch this, here's the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th. You see how it's really pushing its way north? When this comes in with the timing of some drier air, this is when I think we're getting a lot of field work done here. So I think there's a window, an early window opening for a big section of the Corn Belt, just as an example. Okay, is there concern about some late April cool down? Well, this is the 17th through the 24th, and the models right now aren't picking up on it. In fact, I even think that they're still cool biased in the west. I think there's going to be more mild air in this area. As we play this out to the end of April, that last week of April, which would be right here, models still haven't brought back in major cold risk. Now, should any of that change, if we see something brewing in the Arctic that could drop troughs into the central United States, it's going to start with building big ridges into Greenland like we have now, or Alaska like we have now. But if we can avoid that, then this will verify. All right? So here's what I want to finish up with, just now that we've kind of talked about that and knowing that there's some more open windows are going to start to show up. Got a lot of questions lately about this map. We've been talking about the transition toward La Nina. Certainly in neutral conditions right now, despite the warmer ocean temperatures. I'm telling you, the trade winds are not behaving like El Nino. But you've been asking, I've gotten several emails, a couple of texts actually, and some comments on YouTube. This colder water, what does it mean? Now, when you think about that colder water, just remember that over the last 7 days, there's not been a lot of change in it. But over the next 45, I've got to watch this area just as closely as I watch the equatorial Pacific. And the reason for that is this. If you want to know what are the most common symptoms of central United States drought that you could start to assess right now, it's really if the ocean temperatures are telegraphing anything. And if we're going to worry about getting all blocked up in summer with massive heat in the central United States, cooler east, cooler west, wetter east, but very hot and dry in the mid part of the country, it's the next 45 to 60 days to watch not only our INSO region, where we could see La Nina coming in, but off the Baja of California and here in the Gulf of Alaska. Now you're going, okay, but you just showed me that it's cold in there. You have to understand, it's important to understand the depth of this, because that really is the beginning signal of what could be a drought episode in the central United States. So I'm going to tell you why I've not been overly concerned about this just yet by taking you back to some other years. How about just last year in June? Now, off the Baja of California, we got very cold in May into June. And this was part of kind of the symptom of the atmosphere, telling me that the Bermuda High and the Pacific High had left and a big omega block was setting up. But why it didn't last all summer was because warmer water was pushing into the Gulf of Alaska, erasing this effect. And that was more of an indication that later we'd get more ridging west, right? So that's what broke the pattern down once we got past, the end of June and delivered all that rain back to the places that missed out on all of it, most of those areas. Okay, what about some other years, like 2012? So one of the big reasons why I'm not overly concerned right now is because we'd have to get the ocean temperatures by June 1st to massively cool down here. Much cold. Look. This is where they are now. This is where they got in 2012 by June 1st. See that? Really cold here, really cold there. What about another year, like 2002? That was a hot summer. It got colder in this area in June into July and August. What about another one like 1991? All of this was very cold by the time we got into June. And what about 88? It wasn't just cold here, but it was cold in La Nina. It was cold all the way over to Japan. You see, these are the preseason indicators. And so when we think about this and you say, why aren't you talking about it more? Well, I got to see this get a lot colder in the next 60 days before I start just ringing the alarm bell. So that's the thinking, okay? But we do know that some of our long-range models are projecting just an absolute, destruction here of El Nino in the coming weeks and months, such that by the time we get down into July through October, we're looking at a very powerful La Nina event. And that is part of the reason why the CFSV2 model, which you can see by summer, is just cranking out all of this cold water. why it is trying to build drought first in the southern plains coming out of Mexico, but spreading it by July, August, and September. Let's slide that up so you can see all the months here. By July, August, and September across much of the U.S., looking at a fall drought, which then gets hit by a very active hurricane season late in the year. So that's one of the reasons why this model is so aggressive on building in these dry conditions. But I often don't rely much on the CFSV2. Historically, its skill scores bounce around so much, the lack of consistency just tells me to be cautious with it. That's all. So I'm going to throw that out there because on the 5th, I'll get new long-range data. I'll analyze it all weekend, and we'll put it in Monday's video reports, which I will be home, so we'll make sure we get that out to you early. But one last thing to talk about today is this. South America, my narrative hasn't changed at all. You look over the next 10 days, there is absolutely no cause for concern about drought development in the near term. In fact, we may just have to start talking about how it's way too wet down here in southern Brazil, Paraguay, this area. So that can's getting kicked down the road. If there's going to be major drought developing there, I'm not so sure that it's going to be enough to really impact that safrinha crop. It's going to have to come on hard, and it's going to have to get there in the next 15 days before this really becomes a narrative. So I'll leave you at that. Again, thank you for your patience this week with my travel headaches, and we'll get back on a regular cadence. So I appreciate it. Thanks.